Welcome back to Pompey Scrapbook, your historical look at Pompey matches. How you been, Tony?
Yeah, it seems a long time since the season finished now, but looking forward to next season. So it's if what better way to do it than to look back at some happy memories.
Yes, so today we are looking at that little FA Cup run that Pompey had in 2008 and obviously winning the FA Cup. So some fantastic memories. Pompey had only won the FA Cup once before. Give us a rundown on that one, Tony.
It was, as I'm sure everybody is well aware, 1939, and it gave us the great start of being the club that held the FA Cup for the longest because of the Second World War. We held it for 7 years. 1939 also saw my dad go to the cup final, your granddad. Um, Quite amazingly, he cycled from Portsmouth up to Wembley because he didn't have a car, and that was his only means of getting about. And cycled up there, watched the game, cycled home. They didn't mess around in those days.
And you were saying that when you talked to him, he reckoned he'd done it in cycled up in 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my dad has been dead for over 30 years now, but when I did speak to him about it years ago, I said to him, "How long did it take you then?" And he said about 3 hours, which seems quite remarkable, really.
Yeah, some
It's a-
some crap old single gear bike, I expect.
Well, it would have been a bike with no gears, yeah. That he used every day for his, because he was a window cleaner at the time, for his window cleaning round. He'd have been using it every day. It was probably knackered. And yet he could cycle 80 miles to Wembley, or nearly 80 miles, in 3 hours. I mean, he should have been in the Tour de France, shouldn't he?
Yes. Let's before we get started on uh, the 2008, let's just have a quick look at that. So I think this is the last goal. So Portsmouth were playing Wolverhampton Wanderers, who were red hot favourites for the game, weren't they?
But yeah, I don't think they weren't champions. They were in the top couple, though. And but we hammered them. That was Cliff Parker with a header, and that's 4-1, as the scoreboard says. And as that gentleman there is showing us, 4 goals.
I had to include that in the.
And then we get there's Jimmy Guthrie getting the cup from the King
And it's
and the Queen.
all a bit more straightforward those days. There's no champagne and confetti cannons. It's you won, probably straight up there, get the cup. We were saying like your dad was probably out the ground by 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
ready to cycle.
To be honest, yeah, there was no messing around. You literally played the game, went up the steps, got the cup, came down, may have done a little tour of the a lap of honour around the ground, and that would have been it.
Yeah. So yeah. So always been something we talked about. 1939. Obviously the title wins Pompey have had. Um,
Well, I think as people of our era, that's what you were brought up with. We won the cup in '39, the league in '49 and '50, and precious little else really. A couple of lower league titles, and that was it.
yeah.
But that all suddenly changed.
So we came on to this cup run, and um, yeah, it's probably something I never thought would happen in my life supporting Pompey to get
Well,
to that kind of game.
well, I think we all thought we'd had our chance in 1992
Yeah,
when we lost to Liverpool in the semi-final. Well, no, lost on penalties in the semi-final, and that I think everybody thought that was our chance, and we would never get another.
and I think as well going into this, it's interesting the way the FA Cup unfolded that year because you probably think as a smaller club that you're gonna if you get your day out at Wembley to the FA Cup, you're probably going to play one of the big boys and you're probably not going to win. But obviously it unfolded in a different way this year. Um,
It all unfolded basically on one day, which we'll come to in a minute, where the whole cup changed.
yeah. Um, Money wise, just a quick chat before we start looking at games. So Pompey had a good team at the time, and probably a team at a standard that was not financially sustainable for a team with a capacity of 20,000 people. Do you view that this team in this era did that bankrupt Pompey, or was it just bad ownership that bankrupted Pompey?
While there was somebody putting the money in funding it, much like the big clubs do now, they're funded by huge backers. While we had the backing, everything was fine. Obviously, 20,000 crowds were never gonna fund it on their own. It had to be money coming in from outside. As soon as that wasn't there, that was the start of the downfall. And it didn't take long, of course, before it all went very wrong.
So Mandrick had managed the club quite well, hadn't he, with Harry? And then when he sold to Guidermack, Guidermack pursued this, didn't he? He backed Redknapp buying the players. It then went from him. The fake sheikh was involved. Then the guy from Hong Kong, the money man in the background, and it all just.
Don't forget there were the Russians as well involved at some stage.
So it just went from owner to owner, and all they seemed to do was be stripping anything they could get out of the club financially.
Yeah.
And even if this cup run, even if you did say that put us in a bad financial position, I'd still take it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Win the
I mean, what's the point of being in the Premier League and playing with the big boys if you don't, at the end of it, come out with something to show for it?
Yeah.
And not just the fact that all you did was make up the numbers like some other clubs do. And some other clubs will do again.
Yeah. Cool. Let's crack on then. So, third round, who we got?
Ipswich Town. There's an odd stat that we played Ipswich an awful lot in the third round of the FA Cup for some reason, and always away from home.
Okay.
And here we are yet again.
So we're going to whistle through these early rounds. So this is Pompey in black at Ipswich. This is an interesting challenge.
It's not a great challenge. It was Trotter, wasn't it? But it's never a red card. That's a dreadful decision.
I've seen a different replay of it, and there's very little contact. David Nugent is through. Breakaway, 1-0.
I mean, how many people would remember that David Nugent was the one who scored our first goal in that cup run?
And that was the final whistle. So a 1-0 at Portman Road.
Yeah.
Job done. So on to the fourth round. And who do we have in the fourth round, Tone?
We got Plymouth Argyle, looking a bit like Norwich City, actually. As an interesting aside, Plymouth had David Norris playing for them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, strange kit for Plymouth.
Yeah. But here's the only goal we conceded in the whole cup run. Clark, bit of a deflection going in past James.
Only goal, yeah, it is, isn't it?
Mm.
And worth mentioning that every game won by a single goal, I believe, as well.
Yeah, it was indeed. So that was Diarra.
Didn't score many, Diarra, did he?
Not a lot, no.
Not his job.
Probably that would have definitely been his first goal for us, I think. And then Kranjcar with a bit of a gift. 2-1, and I remember being at the game, and we were very fortunate to win, really. Plymouth. So if you're a Plymouth fan, you'd have been pretty disappointed.
And if you thought those highlights were brief, we're on to the next round. Fifth round.
The fifth round. This was Preston on a Sunday. It's live. We'd made it onto live TV by now. But again, we were pretty much second best for most of this game at Preston. But somehow it goes in. Herman's there claiming it, but his only involvement was touch it with his hand. And it's Carter, Darren Carter, hooks it in as an own goal.
Yeah.
Right in the last minute.
And that's the foul, and then there's a bit of. But by the time that's taken, that's the game over. So
yeah, and that's all over, and that's it. 1-0, and we're into the sixth round.
which we may refer to as the quarterfinals.
We can do, yes. And there's a big. Who do we draw? Let's hope we just don't draw Manchester United.
So who's left at this point then? Because there's a lot of Premier League teams have gone out, haven't they, by this stage?
They had, but the big two still left were Manchester United and Chelsea. I think Middlesbrough was still going at the time, but they were sort of level as with us, I suppose, at the time. They were Premier League. But if you avoided, as long as you avoided Manchester United and Chelsea, we'd have been happy.
I think at the time, Pompey weren't. Pompey were about ninth in the table, I believe, from the cup final. So we were a decent side. I don't know where Middlesbrough would have been. Probably not that high.
No, I don't think they were far behind. I mean, they were pretty established. They weren't fighting relegation or anything. They were fairly established in the Premier League at the time.
So on we go to Old Trafford, and I think you'd have had to had some quite strong blue tinted spectacles to think we were going to go and get a win at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
Just before we start on the highlights, I just wanted to. This is from the TV coverage, and it just shows the team that started at Old Trafford. So it's a pretty typical team for that season. I just thought it was worth having a little look at. I mean,
one of the things about that season, I don't think we had an awful lot of injuries through the whole season because that team remained fairly constant. Diarra sort of came in during the season, but the rest would have been there the whole way through.
Diarra came in from Arsenal for 4 million.
Yeah.
And as if you want any idea how good he was, he left us for about 20 million to Real Madrid.
And they got a bargain.
It was a very, very effective defensive midfielder. So looking at the defence, it's hard to think of a better defence you could put out for Pompey than that. Those two centre halves, Johnson, Haridason, and obviously JMO in goal, maybe the best we've ever seen.
Safely say in our lifetimes of watching that, we've never had a better defence than that. That is a back four. You will not beat that.
And then in the middle, as a three there, Diarra, Diop, and Muntari. Wow, that's three strong players. The physically strong players to be in the middle.
They are three extremely strong players, and especially for me, Diarra and Muntari was a superb player. Yeah. Sadly, we only had him for that one season, but
and
what a season it was.
Papa Bouba Diop, nicknamed the Wardrobe, I believe. Then it says about him.
He was a real strong player, and I guess he played the nasty role to the other two in some way. But wherever you look in that team, there's just quality.
Yeah, and then up front, Kanu. This game, we obviously by this time were using quite a lot of Milan Barros, and we also had on the books Jermaine Defoe, who was cup tied for the FA Cup run.
Yeah. And previously we'd had Benjani, but by now I think he'd moved on. But he started the season up front as well.
Okay.
You'd look at that and you think, how the hell do you get by with one striker in Kanu who's, let's be honest, wasn't that mobile, but his touch and the way he could hold the ball up were just something else.
And the only other player to mention in there, you mentioned you liked Diarra and Muntari as your preferred midfielders in there. We have Mendes as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's get on to some game highlights then. Let's watch us tear Man United apart.
Oh, this was never in doubt, this game, was it? This is one of those games that you just look back on now and think, you watch it now and you think, yeah, it's great, but at the time, how the hell did we win this game?
So that was Rooney through on the break, and
Tevez shot.
hits the ball in pretty much the only place where Glen Johnson could head it off the line.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's one of the many scrambles. It comes out and it's Ronaldo, and you think this is going to nestle in the corner. Ooh, not quite. Bad luck.
Right, just before we're going to switch to a different set of highlights because there's one particular, or a couple of other chances we wanted to include. So
Well, the notable thing about this game was the chances that Man United missed, and this was the best of them. Right?
this is the one where when you watch the replay closely, there's another touch where it just hits Distan's standing leg
Yeah.
on the line, and at that point, that's when I started to think, I'm not sure they're ever going to score.
Yeah, I think we were probably all thinking the same. Yeah.
And then this chance, then
This is the one where it comes out and
this is a great
James makes the saves. Yeah, James makes the save, turns it onto the post.
Yeah. Let's just wait.
Yeah, you actually see the touch here. That's
Fantastic save.
That's quite some save.
So back to the save before, and JMO is kicking it out of his hands and has created this situation.
And United were pushing forward, and suddenly we had a 2-on-2 against 2.
So it was Kranjcar into Barros. This challenge. I think we talked about it. We said it is he's looking for the contact, but it is a penalty.
Of course, yeah. Of course he is. It's clearly a penalty. Kuszczak has come flying out, nowhere near the ball, and Barros has seen it and thought, "Oh, I'll go over and go down here."
So we think that the first half that United lost, we think it was Van der Sar.
Yep.
Lost in.
We went off half time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they already had
Kuszczak,
the third goal being.
Kuszczak replaced him, yeah, and obviously was sent off, and so we got Rio Ferdinand in goal. And it's my man Muntari. Quite a short run up for his penalty, yeah. About 2 steps. But there it is.
Pretty good pen. 12 minutes to go in this game at this point.
But I think you're starting to get the feeling now this is going to be our day now.
Yeah, there's the final whistle. Job's done.
And the remarkable thing was this was Saturday lunchtime, and I think 99% of us expected to get beaten, and we'd won. But there was still Chelsea in the cup. And then by that evening, Chelsea had gone out to Barnsley, and all of a sudden, we were odds-on favourites to win the cup.
Yeah. Looking at that game, I mean, I thought the stats might be even worse than they are, but 19 shot attempts for Man United against our 6. But I just think they had really, really good chances that on another day, probably see them take 3 of them. But not that day.
If it had been 3-0, you wouldn't have been surprised. But it's just one of those days. Nothing went in for them. We defended superbly. Campbell and Distan were superb, and behind them James was just immense. And we took basically the one chance that we had.
Yeah. So we're going to catch up with some of those games then with a Pompey card for David James.
Yes, David James.
So JMO's the same age as me, believe it or not.
Oh.
He's a little bit taller than me at 6'4".
He's a little bit taller than me.
158 games for Pompey, 53 games for England. I've given him a Pompey power of 92.
Where does that rate against what we gave 90?
90 got 92 also. So we've given him same score. Let's compare and contrast David James and Alan Knight then.
David James, for me, undoubtedly the best goalkeeper we have had in modern times. I can only reflect on players that I've seen, so I can't go back to people like Ernie Butler from the Championship team because I never saw them.
Mm.
James, to me, was head and shoulders above every other goalkeeper we've had. The slight difference with Knighty is Knighty was a superb keeper as well, and the fact he did 20 years for us and everything he's done for the club since then, that's what gets him on an even keel with JMO. Because as we said before on here, Pompey Power is not just about your ability on the pitch; it's about what you do for the club as well.
Yeah, David James, different era, would have been focused on healthy eating, looking after his body, etc., etc. Don't think we can say the same about Alan Knight.
No,
Um, different era though.
no,
He's
it is different era.
he's from that era. The players like him, Mick Quinn, back in the days when you were a professional footballer and after a game you had a beer. That was
Yeah,
different
yeah.
era.
And worth mentioning as well, that photo there is from the 2010 Cup final, and it's worth mentioning that JMO didn't cut and run like some players when the money ran out. He did stick through that last season in the Premier League when we were certs to be relegated all season, but we ended up with a cup final appearance again.
And I think
So
James as well would have. I think he hinted at it a few times. If the club had been willing, he would have come in and had a go at management and other
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Club was moving in a different direction. So
yeah.
yeah,
But
so that's JMO. So we're into the semi-finals. Only Premier League team left with West Brom, Cardiff, and
Barnsley.
Barnsley. Yeah. Okay. So
And out of the three, West Brom were probably the toughest of the Championship sides left. They would have been the highest ranked of those Championship sides, and we drew them.
yeah. So at Wembley. So would have been for both of us our first chance in our lifetime to watch Pompey at Wembley.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's have a look.
And
Go on.
I guess the first time both of us had been to the new Wembley. We've been to the old Wembley a few times, but it was certainly my first visit to the new Wembley.
I had been for something else by then,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But it's one of those games. To be honest, there's very little to remember about the game.
No, it wasn't a thriller, was it?
No. And as you can see, because we've gone straight to the second half,
Barros, that was.
and Herman sliding in, and then Kanu picking up the pieces.
Yeah. We talked about Kanu before because we've done a Pompey card for Kanu, who scored an 89 in his Pompey card. This was one of his key contributions. Was this cup run?
Yeah,
Been
definitely.
quite a few years at Pompey. Scored quite a lot of goals, but we will all remember these two games, won't we? These two 1-0s.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, he was a strange player. He had so much ability. He basically could hardly run, but when he got the ball, you just could not get it off him.
Got to remember that when he signed for Pompey, he was probably 55.
At least. Other interesting thing: the West Brom keeper coming up there is Dean Kiley,
Yes.
who was a keeper that was replaced by David James.
So that's it. We're off to a cup final.
Yeah, who would have thought it, eh?
Yeah. Memories from that day, Tony, the cup final day.
Well, the semi-final, we went up on the supporters club coach, up and back in the day, and we just decided it's a cup final. We probably won't ever do this again. We just wanted to make the most of it and enjoy the whole weekend. So we travelled up on Friday, booked into a B&B in Harrow for 2 nights, and did that. Just enjoyed the whole day. It was a good day. It was a really good day. Meeting up with family, friends, having a few drinks, just enjoying the whole thing. And hopefully, as we were thinking at the time, hopefully then driving back down south for a celebration on Southsea Common on the Sunday.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get into it then with this cup final. course, Portsmouth playing a Welsh team, that added a slightly different dynamic to things, didn't it?
It did, because from memory, wasn't there some talk about if Cardiff won it or something, they might not qualify for the UEFA Cup or the whatever it was called then?
And
There was some talk I remember
yeah,
about that.
and I remember there being some discussions around anthems and various.
Yeah,
It was all a little bit different because it was a Welsh team for a first time for a long time.
yeah.
So, but it meant that you had two not big clubs at Wembley, and one of the resultant factors out of that was that there was a very high attendance.
It's 89, 800 and something. Only about 100 short of capacity from what I remember. A figure that still stands today as the highest attendance at New Wembley.
Yeah.
Kanu showing his skills there.
We just had the Manchester Derby as an FA Cup final, and I think that was 84,000.
Yeah,
Five
so it's
short.
over 5,000 less than there was this day.
So John Utaka into the middle. That's the goal. That tap in from Kanu.
Bit of a fumble from Enkelman and some sort of weird celebration from Kanu, which we don't know about. But I remember in the B&B we stayed at, there were some Cardiff fans, and when I came down the following morning, they didn't rate Enkelman at all. They just thought he was awful, to be honest.
Remember what the football looks like, Tony. That they're playing with.
Yeah, that's
We'll talk about
some sort of luckily a disallowed goal for us. Not really sure where the foul is, to be honest, but
and you could say that of these two games. So we ended up playing two championship clubs,
yeah,
and we didn't. It's fair to say we didn't murder either of them, did we? They were tight
certainly not.
games.
No, I think we're about to get the final whistle.
Yeah, there. That's all she wrote. Yeah, nervy games. We talked about before comparing this game to when we did the Checker Trade final, and
Yeah,
I just everyone just felt some pressure this day because we were favourites. It was a different dynamic, wasn't it?
it was because all those years growing up, we always thought if we went to an FA Cup final, we were going to be the underdogs, and all of a sudden we were the huge favourites, and it took some getting used to be honest.
Kanu was enjoying himself there.
Yeah, and then the great moment that we all wanted to see.
When
Sol Campbell, who was absolutely immense for us.
when Sol went up to lift the FA Cup.
Yep. So Bobby there, of course, presenting it. And those sort of moments you can never take away. They're always there.
There
Whatever happened in the next few years, that moment is always there.
and you got a shot of Mr. Guidermack in the background there,
Yeah.
who was the owner at the time.
And it wasn't just us. I mean, we were both there, obviously. There was, 40,000, I don't know, 40,000 Pompey fans.
Yeah,
And probably all thinking the same as us, that they would never see that day. But there it was. It happened.
yeah, awesome memories, and yeah, probably for most Pompey fans, their best day supporting Pompey.
Yeah, yeah. And it's unlikely it will happen again, but you never know. Never say never.
So, just wrapping up memories from that day, Tony. I did say at one point during the game to have a look at that football. It looks a bit like this one.
It does look a little bit like that one. Then where did you get that from? Then
So I managed to acquire this. I won't go into too much detail, but I managed to acquire this and gave it to my son as a birthday present. So that is a match ball from the FA Cup final. I can't say it's the one that Kanu knocked in the net because I'm sure there's probably 15, 20 match balls involved in a match.
that an official ball that was actually on duty on the day,
Apparently so. Yeah.
not a replica or a.
No. So it's a match ball and it's got PFC written on it. So I assume at the end of the game they'd written that was PFC's ball to give them. I'm sure they probably gave a set of balls to Pompey to keep, and then it's got a whole load of unrecognisable squiggled signatures all over.
Right, yeah. So it could be the one that got knocked in by Kanu.
Could be, yeah. So a nice memory.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah.
So the next day.
Well, as I said earlier, the plan was that we would stay up in London on the Saturday night, drive down, hopefully for a celebration on Sunday, and that's exactly what happened. These were the good days of celebrations as well, because the open top bus is the big thing for me. That's edging its way through the crowds.
Let me ask you a question. Why did Pompey not have an open top bus parade after winning League One this year?
That I just don't understand. There must be some reason why they can't. Perhaps the local authorities can't close off the streets or something now. But to me, that's the main thing. It gives everybody a chance to see them close up as they edge through the crowds.
Yeah.
The thing on Southsea Common is all very nice, where they get up and all have a little speech. But unless you're right down the front, which means getting there hours early, you don't really see anything.
Yeah, and you're setting up a stage in the middle of a field, sound issues. I don't understand why they didn't, even if it was shortened to allow for road closures, why they didn't do it this year with the league. And they had the women's trophies as well to parade. So
It's obvious that you start it from Fratton Park, and drive down towards Southsea and have the little cup lifting thing there. I mean, that day on Southsea Common, there was estimated about 200,000 people down there. The numbers were absolutely enormous.
Yeah, fantastic memories. Just
Yeah,
one bit of admin then to finish up, and we've got one more top trump. We've had David James. We have previously, just to confirm, we have done Kanu before. He was an 89.
New on the mural episode.
Yeah. And then
80.
From this one, we got this gentleman, Sol Campbell. So interesting that he was the captain, lifted the FA Cup. We've scored him less than David James. What factors play into that, then?
As a player, you could not underestimate his ability. I mean, he's as good a centre back as we've ever had. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And for a year, 2 years, 2 years he played, he was superb for us. What marks him slightly down is the old thing about the Pompey power again, and is what else he did with the club. Whereas the likes of JMO hung around for another couple of years while we went through the downtime. Sol basically was off straight away, virtually.
And I think there's a lot of talk about him taking legal action against the club.
Yeah, he was gone within a couple of months of the start of the next season. Fine, that's his priority. What will never be forgotten, though, is that picture there of him lifting up the FA Cup, and one of only two people to do that for us, of course.
Yeah. Fantastic memories.
Yep.
That wraps up Pompey winning the FA Cup again.
Yeah. And good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us, Tony. And
that's all right. Thanks for joining me.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Okay. Cheers. Thank you.